This case involves a real story about violence against a child. I do describe some details of this violence to chronologically lay out the events. It does not, however, change the especially distressing nature of this case. Please click out of this video if this is a topic you are not comfortable with. Besides Sara Sharif, all other children involved in this case are referred to by letters, as per privacy laws for minors in the United Kingdom. It was 2:47 a.m. on August the 10th, 2023, when Surrey police received a call from Pakistan. On the line was a 42-year-old man named Urfan Sharif, who was sobbing and telling the police call handler that he had legally punished his daughter and she died. This call lasted about 9 minutes, with the police trying to get more information about Urfan and him trying as hard as possible to not give too much away about his whereabouts. He told the police, "I've killed my daughter." He went on to say that he beat her up excessively due to her bad behaviour. He was referring to his daughter, Sara Sharif, who he had left behind in Woking, England, and the police were unaware that he, along with his wife, Beanish Batul, and younger brother, Faisal Malik, had fled the country. This is part of the call for you to get an idea.
Okay, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and tell me what's happened.
I cannot. I physically punished my daughter and she died. I had left home in a panic. God, she is allowed at home.
I need you to take a breath because I cannot understand what you're saying, okay? Your daughter has died.
I killed my daughter. I killed my daughter. My daughter is dead. I panic and left home.
Who's killed your daughter?
It's me.
Okay.
Father.
Okay. How have you killed your daughter?
I beat her up. It wasn't my intention to kill her, but I beat her up too much.
Okay, where is your daughter now?
She's number.
Where are you?
I'm left the property. I'm gonna come back.
Okay. What's your name? What is your name?
My name is Urfan Sharif. Can you send someone? My daughter is in love.
Yes.
Please,
Yes. Don't worry. Nothing's going to be slowed down. Okay. What is your? Okay.
I'm gonna hand over myself.
Okay. I need you to slow down. Okay. Okay. What happened? What led to this all happening?
I think she was naughty over the last 3-4 weeks, and I was giving her punishment that she to sort her out. And yes, I did something and she died.
Was she breathing when you left?
No, she was not. I tried to resuscitate her, tried to give her CPR, everything, but I shared. I left in panic. I'm a cruel father.
Where are you right now?
I'm not around. I'm going to come back.
By the time the call was over, Police Constable George Van Der Wart was knocking on the door of the Sharif family home. When he walked into the bedroom at the top of the stairs, what he discovered would unravel not just a group of abusive adults who were meant to protect a child, but also a tremendous failure by authorities over the course of a decade. On the lower level of a bunk bed under the covers, PC Van Der Wart found the lifeless body of 10-year-old Sara Sharif, with signs of severe trauma and abuse. A fan had been left on, pointing towards her. Next to it was a note in Urfan's handwriting explaining he had beaten and killed her. This note read, and these are Urfan's words: "Love you, Sara. Whoever sees this note, it's me, Urfan Sharif, who killed my daughter by beating. I am running away because I am scared, but I promise that I will hand over myself and take punishment. I swear to God that my intention was not to kill her, but I lost it. My daughter is Muslim. Can you bury her like Muslim maybe? I will be back before you finish the post-mortem." Nearby were Sara's letters and a red notebook. In one undated note to Urfan and her stepmother, Beanish, Sara wrote that she was sorry for being rude and answering back. It concluded with the words, "Please forgive me, I am so sorry." A card to her father stated, "I love you so much. Our family is the best in town." Police also found a heartbreaking story she had written about a queen called Beanish and a princess called Sara. in which Beanish was described as the best caring and loving mother in the world. Doctors who examined Sara's body concluded that she had sustained an awful constellation of injuries. She had signs of being tied up for lengthy periods of time. There were 72 fractures spread across her spine, collarbone, ribs, shoulder blades, arms and hands, and 3 fingers. There were bite marks on Sara's left arm, as well as one on her inner thigh. There were also injuries from burns all over her body. Her back was broken with a force comparable to that of falling from a 20-foot height. This abuse happened throughout her life, but most of it took place during her last 2 months to 10 days before her demise. A further search of the house and garden revealed homemade hoods made of plastic bags and packing tape, a cricket bat with Sara's blood on it, and an iron rod. This was deliberately called a campaign of abuse by prosecutors. The words are important because of how the abuse was dealt out. It wasn't done solely out of rage or emotion. It was planned in advance, coordinated amongst 3 adults with mitigation set in place to cover it up from anyone with authority. Sara began her life on January the 11th, 2013 at Wexham Park Hospital in Slough, where she was born to Urfan Sharif and Olga Domin. She was described by her teachers as sassy and bubbly. She wanted to be a star on X Factor and a ballet dancer one day. She liked to play guitar, her favorite color was pink, and she loved to eat biryani, a traditional Pakistani and Indian food, but she really hated bread. The 3 adults in Sara's life, who had the responsibility of looking after her, but were instead responsible for her torment, were her father, Urfan Sharif, her stepmother, 30-year-old Beanish Batul, and Urfan's brother, 29-year-old Faisal Malik. Beanish and Faisal come into the story a little while later. Urfan Sharif was born in Jhelum, North Pakistan, and moved to the UK in 2003. He moved to study business management at university, but eventually became a taxi driver after some other jobs. One of his jobs included being a shift manager at a McDonald's, for which he got fired after being convicted of stealing £1,700. A student who attended the same military school in Jhelum as Urfan said that he had very limited friends, and he used to often have spontaneous mood swings, some of them being violent. Over the years, Urfan was accused of targeting several women who spoke little English, bringing them to the UK, taking their travel documents, and then trapping them there so he could control them, allegations which he denied. One woman, who was 18 at the time and 9 years his junior, later described Urfan as someone who has 2 faces. One is kind, nice, and apologetic, but the second face, the one people don't see, is the devil. Another one of these women would become Sara's mother in January 2013, Olga Domin, a Polish woman who spoke very little English. They had met online and known each other for less than a year before they got married in 2009 and started to have children. Before Sara was even born, the family was known to police and children's services due to violent incidents in the family, mainly from Urfan. Records show police were involved 4 times between 2010 and 2012, and this violence was initially directed towards Sara's older siblings, who were referred to as Child Z and Child U. In 2010, Zed was found alone in a shop aged just 3. Later that year, Urfan was arrested for assaulting Olga. During the fight, he hit Zed, leaving a handprint on the child's back. In 2011, Zed told teachers, "Daddy hit me," and the following year told them, "Mummy hit me." The child was found with a burn mark and was again discovered alone in public in Woking Town Centre, half a mile away from home. Social care workers recorded Child Z's injuries as unexplained, and another assault was also recorded against Child U. Due to the history of violence amongst Urfan and Olga, Sara was immediately put under a care order soon after she was born in early 2013. In the UK, a care order does not necessarily mean that the child will be put in a foster home, but it gives the local council authority legal responsibility over the child, and it usually involves frequent visits and care sessions with care workers. On February the 22nd, 2013, when Sara was a little over a month old, social services and police were informed that Urfan had slapped one of the children around the face. In May 2013, a social worker was on a visit when she noticed a burn mark on a child's leg. Urfan claimed it was due to a barbecuing accident. 5 months later, in 2013, there was a further incident when Zed was burned by an iron. This time, Urfan told social services that the child had bumped into the iron. When social care workers eventually did decide to inspect the home, they found it in a mess. and that the children did not have access to basic necessities like bedding or light bulbs in their rooms. They finally decided to put Child Z and Child U under a care order as well. Sara was first taken into foster care for a short period in November 2014 when she was almost 2, after Child Z complained of being bitten very hard by Olga and pinched and punched by Urfan. The social care workers noticed what looked like cigarette burns on both Sara and Child U. Olga and Urfan said that there were chickenpox scars. Sara and Child U would eventually join their parents again, but Zed would remain in foster care. The following month, a child told a social worker that they didn't like Urfan as he punched them and left them with bruises. Urfan was reported to social services in January 2015 for waving a knife around in the family home in what he described as a zombie game. Social workers also noted that allegations of Urfan hitting and kicking Olga were made and that the couple had threatened to kill each other. In 2015, in the middle of a care session, Olga once again accused Urfan of hitting her and their children and of controlling and violent behaviour. These allegations never went to court, but Urfan agreed to go on a domestic violence course, which didn't seem to change his outlook. During one care session, which the children were present for, Urfan went over to Sara and she shouted at him to, quote, go away, and was visibly scared in his presence. It was also noted by the social care worker that Child U told him that Urfan, quote, hit Mummy in the mouth and made her bleed. So at this point, violence in the family was on blatant display in front of the children's services, and it was clear that this was not a safe place for them. Sharif and Olga would eventually split up and Sara would stay with her mother. During this time, Urfan was already having a secret affair with Binish, who he'd met on one of his taxi fares, and they eventually would get married. I'd like to briefly give some background on Binish to illustrate the lengths she would go to deceive people. Binish was born in Luton, England, to a working-class family. She was the second oldest out of 4 sisters. In 2012, aged 18, Binish fled home to live with a boyfriend named Mir, who had moved to the UK from Pakistan and intended to marry him. Since her parents did not approve of this relationship, it was later determined by the court that she was kept against her will in a family member's house until she agreed to call off their relationship. She was eventually able to go to the police and move to a refuge with her partner, but Mir had to return to Pakistan after his student visa expired, and they were still waiting for their marriage to be registered officially. Not long after that, Binish started to see another man named Shamriz Khan, who was more than 20 years her senior, aged 42. Seeing as how Khan ran a successful drug smuggling business, acquaintances at the time pointed out that Binish started to style herself as a well-off person named Aisha Khan from London. This was, of course, a lie. Binish would not be a stranger to deceiving in other ways. For example, in 2014, she was convicted of stealing gold jewellery from a friend worth £411. She was caught when she tried to play off a replica as the real thing, and the friend discovered the lie. Khan would eventually end up in jail for attempting to smuggle approximately £200,000 of heroin. This happened in 2014, the year she met Urfan and started a relationship behind Khan's back. With Khan now out of the picture, she moved in with Urfan, whose own relationship with Olga had broken down. Once they were living together, she soon fell pregnant with twins. She would visit Khan in jail and tell him they were his children, and at home, she would tell Urfan she already had twin children with Khan. Binish would use this as an excuse to Urfan about why she needed to stay in touch with Khan, saying the twins were sometimes in Luton or abroad with Khan. She'd even show Urfan photos of other people's twins, claiming that they were her and Khan's. This whole time, she had still been leading Mir on until 2017, when they were able to finally register their marriage, and Mir, on the basis of starting his life with his new wife, moved back to the UK. He eventually discovered this duplicity and moved back to Pakistan. There are no details on how Binish was able to conceal her pregnancy and birth of the twins, but in 2022, the lie was discovered by Urfan. They initially planned to divorce, but decided to eventually stay together. Going back to Sara, she lived with her mother when Urfan and Olga split up in 2015, but in Easter 2019, Urfan reported to care workers that Sara had told him Olga had been violent towards her. Sara said her mother had tried to drown her and burn her with a lighter. She also said her mother had slapped her, pinched her, and pulled her hair. Urfan recorded some of these allegations in a video, including Sara saying that Olga smoked cannabis, refused to feed her, and used to leave her on her own for extended periods of time. Sara was taken into foster care while they assessed who she should live with. It recently came to light that there was a large amount of trust placed on the fact that Beanish would make a good stepmother. So in October 2019, Guildford Family Court agreed that both Sara and child U should return to live with their father and Beanish, their new stepmother. By this time, Urfan and Beanish were living in a small 2-bedroom flat with Sara, child U, and the other children. This is where a large part of both the physical and verbal abuse would begin. At first, the custody arrangement stated that Olga was to have contact for 2 hours every Saturday. This contact was to be supervised by Beanish, but over time, Urfan disallowed these meetings. Beanish and Olga had an extremely difficult relationship, and I imagine Beanish was doing whatever she could to hide the abuse they were committing against Sara. Eventually, neighbors started to describe the family as a nightmare family. Loud banging noises would go on into the late hours of the night. If anyone went to check if everything was okay, they'd quickly be told to go away. Other neighbors described hearing smacking, yelling, and Beanish swearing and sounds of a child screaming. Even though the neighbors were concerned about the noise levels, the police or social services were never called. And that is a tragedy, because what was going on inside was horrific. Throughout 2020, Beanish sent her sister some pictures of Sara with obvious serious bruising to her arms and face. Over the next 2 years, she sent frequent messages to her sister about Urfan, quote, beating the crap out of Sara, leaving her covered in bruises and unable to walk. She claimed that one night Urfan kept Sara up all night doing sit-ups. In one message, she claimed that she had to push Urfan out of the way to save Sara. Neither Beanish nor her sisters called the police or social services. This abuse went on for years. Eventually, Sara was made to wear a headscarf. Neighbors and teachers found it strange when Sara became the only one of several girls in their family to wear one, but it was later determined that it was so her injuries wouldn't be discovered. Despite the headscarf, her class teacher noticed injuries on her cheek and the underside of her chin. Sara said she had fallen over on her roller skates, but her teacher later discovered her story was inconsistent, as Sara later told a friend she had fallen off her bike. On one occasion, Beanish was seen using explicit and abusive words when dropping Sara off to school. This abuse was reported to Surrey County Council's Children's Services, and they would become involved in the case. But after a 6-day investigation, they decided no action was necessary and asked the school to monitor the situation. On March 28, 2023, 10-year-old Sara came to school with another bruise. Beanish told the class teacher the injury was caused by a pen. This was recorded as part of the school's monitoring report, but a month later, the family pulled Sara out of school, claiming she was being bullied for wearing a headscarf. This was, of course, not true. It was likely done because they were feeling worried that the school was monitoring them. The family then decided to move to a bigger semi-detached house in Woking. Faisal Malik, Urfan's brother, had joined them as part of the household to attend university and work as a shift manager in McDonald's. This household now consisted of Urfan, Beanish, Faisal as the 3 adults, and other children including child U and Sara. The other children are not relevant to this case and thus have not been identified by the British courts. I won't say much about Faisal, but it's important to note that he was aware of everything Urfan and Beanish were doing to Sara. Since the family had decided to homeschool Sara, it was no longer possible for school staff to monitor her situation. Social services had also previously decided that no further action was necessary, but this decision would soon have tragic consequences. Urfan's abuse was mostly focused on Sara, but I would find it hard to believe that it did not spill out to the other children, never mind the fact that they were at least a witness to horrific abuse taking place against Sara. The family's new neighbors noticed Sara's demeanor and the fact that she never smiled. Bruises were hidden with either a headscarf or sunglasses. The only time the neighbors saw her outside was if she was doing chores, like putting clothes out to dry. On May the 25th, 2023, Beanish sent another message to her sister, which read, quote, "He beat her up like crazy. Her oxygen level dropped really low. She's finding it hard to stay awake. She's breathing really, really rapidly." Over the next few months, Sara was harmed in increasingly violent ways involving biting, branding, and other forms of assault, sometimes while she was kept hooded with plastic bags and tied to fixtures. There were also signs of injuries made with a cricket bat, iron rod, and a mobile phone on the body and on her head. There were fractures in her neck which were determined to come from manual strangulation. The excuse used by Urfan was that he was punishing her for bad behaviour. This type of abuse over the years had become normalized to Sara, and with reference to the apology notes she left, she might have felt like she deserved it. She was raised on it after all. The bite marks found on her body didn't match the dental impressions of Urfan or Faisal. Beanish refused to give her dental impressions, and it is believed that they could belong to her. But the cruelty of the adults in her life knew no bounds. They'd let her recover a bit and then start the torture again. In the last few days of her life, Sara started to visibly deteriorate, likely due to trauma from a brain injury. She was frequently vomiting and had to wear a nappy because she'd often soil herself. This angered Urfan, who used a bat on her as punishment. Sara was barely clinging on to life when Beanish had found her body just moments earlier, sometime during August the 8th. And this is where Urfan's cruelty towards Sara probably reached a point of sadism I haven't heard of in many other cases. Beanish called Urfan at work and told him what was happening, and he left his shift early to punish Sara. When he came upon her barely alive body that evening, he felt that she was pretending to be in pain, and he started to assault her further with an iron pole, thinking it would make her stop pretending. Eventually, Sara was gone. After realizing what he'd done, he tried to administer CPR for hours until Beanish told him to stop. They realized they had just killed Sara, and the thought of being caught must have caused the trio of depraved idiots to panic. So on the evening of August the 8th, they hatched a plan for the remaining family to flee the country. On August the 9th, less than 24 hours after Beanish and Urfan had murdered Sara, they, along with the rest of the children and Faisal, fled the United Kingdom to Pakistan, abandoning their car on the top floor of Heathrow's Terminal 3 short-stay car park with the keys still in the ignition. At this point, Urfan, Beanish and Faisal felt safe because the UK and Pakistan do not have extradition laws, which means Pakistani police have no legal obligation to arrest anyone who has committed a crime in the UK. This is exactly what the trio were counting on when they arrived at Urfan's father's house in Jhelum to hide. But something must have caused Urfan to crack, because a few hours after they landed, he called Surrey police with the phone call we heard at the start of this video. He might have felt a shade of guilt for a while, but he certainly didn't show it afterwards. Urfan, Beanish and Faisal had no intention of returning to England. Urfan hadn't told the police where he was or who was with him, and it took British police about 5 days to determine from CCTV and flight records that they had fled to Pakistan. This information was immediately conveyed through Interpol to the district police officer in Jhelum. By August the 15th, Nasir Mahmood Bajwa was spearheading the investigation in Pakistan and arranged to carry out a safety and wellness check on the children with Urfan and Beanish. He dispatched officers to visit the home of Mohammed Sharif, Urfan and Faisal's father. When Mohammed Sharif answered the door on the morning of August the 16th, he didn't have the full story. It's reported that Urfan, Beanish and Faisal told him that Sara's death was an accident. Mohammed Sharif did reportedly tell them to go back to the UK and face justice, but upon their reluctance to give themselves up, he decided to continue to harbour them. He told the police that he hasn't seen his son Urfan since 2010, and they must be in another city called Mirpur, which is where Beanish's extended family lived. This was obviously a lie. The Pakistani police were extremely suspicious of this claim, so they decided to go undercover and use what they refer to as spies. Over a period of 4 weeks, they made several attempts to go into Mohammed Sharif's house and other houses they were suspected of hiding in, once even with the BBC camera crew. But they never found Urfan, Beanish or Faisal. The Pakistani police had also set up a covert operation where civilian-clothed police would go into various shops to just chat to people hoping to get more information. And it was sometime in early September 2023 that one of the officers, Imran Hussain, ended up at the barbershop Urfan used to frequent, close to his father's house in Pakistan. The officer was getting a haircut when in casual conversation, the barber mentioned something about Urfan moving from Britain to Pakistan with his British-born wife. The officer then checked the CCTV in the surrounding area, which validated the barber's statement. but when they knocked at the door again, Mohammed Sharif again denied having any information, so the police basically arrested about 20 people, some of them friends or neighbors, who might have had no idea what Urfan had done. Now they were obviously trying to find the murderers and cooperate with the British authorities, but here's where the Pakistani police started to bend the rules. The Pakistani police have denied this, but it's reported they started making up fake charges against Urfan's family members in order to keep them longer than 48 hours, the maximum amount of time they could keep a suspect without charges. The reason behind this was to pressure the trio of adults to come out of hiding. Keeping in mind that uninvolved parties were possibly tortured and falsely accused, it did force Urfan, Beenish and Faisal to surrender themselves to the police. It took 4 weeks and them moving from house to house, but eventually Urfan, Beenish and Faisal all came forward and flew back to the UK, leaving their children behind in Pakistan, who still remain with their grandfather to this day. All three were arrested on September the 13th, 2023 when they landed at Gatwick, and they were interviewed the following day. The interviews were mostly uneventful. All three parties refused to comment on each question by the police and remained silent for others. This is a snippet of the interviews, including Beenish's interview where she shows a shocking lack of empathy when asked if she loved Sara.
Who is responsible for her death?
और उसका जिम्मेदार कौन था उसकी मौत का?
No comments.
Okay.
In my view, this little girl was tortured, and you were either actively involved in torturing her, or you were just sat there going, "It's not my problem. I can't do anything,"
या फिर
and involved in that way.
No comments.
What's your understanding of murder? What's your understanding of that offence?
Killing someone?
Yeah. Okay, so it's intentionally killing somebody. Okay, in very simple terms. Okay, that's the offence for which you've been arrested for, and that's the offence for which we're going to speak to you about. All right. What happened to Sara?
No comment.
What did you see?
No comment.
Whose choice was it? How you left Sara?
No comment.
You know, Dawn's just said, as you said in the video, you want to come back to the UK, clear your name in the UK courts. Well, here we are. This is the start of the process. So why would you not speak to us now?
No comment.
Who did that to Sara?
No comment.
Do you love Sara?
No comment.
Did you care about her at all?
No comment.
That's the end of the interview.
The trial started on October the 7th, 2024. At first, Urfan said he didn't do anything wrong. He took back the confession he had made earlier in the phone call and in the note left near Sara's body. During the early part of the trial, Urfan tried to blame Beenish for Sara's death. He said he was at work when anything bad happened and that Beenish was the one who wanted to run away to Pakistan. He claimed that Beenish had even written his earlier confession for him and was responsible for the majority of the abuse. But on November the 13th, everything changed. Urfan finally admitted he was responsible. In front of the jurors, he said, quote, "I accept every single thing." He confirmed that he had hurt Sara, causing her injuries and fractures. He also admitted that he had beaten his daughter with a cricket bat. Faisal and Beenish did not speak or provide much evidence for their trials, but Beenish's defense unsuccessfully tried to make the case that she was a vulnerable woman who was being forced to commit violence because of Urfan. Faisal tried to claim he was usually too busy playing on his phone or studying to notice the abuse. Ultimately, on December the 17th, 2024, Urfan Sharif and Beenish Batul were found guilty of murder and both sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 40 and 33 years respectively. Faisal Malik was cleared of murder charges but found guilty of causing or allowing the death of a child and sentenced to 16 years. As the sentences were handed down, the entire courtroom erupted in tears, cheers, and clapping, with people shouting evil towards the trio. It says a lot about Urfan's frame of mind that during his phone call with the police, he claimed he had legally punished her before Sara died. I believe that it was him still not accepting that he did anything wrong and trying to downplay the amount of violence he had inflicted upon a child. Urfan was responsible for being the ringleader and executioner for this campaign of abuse and her death, starting from the time Sara was just a month old. The signs of his violence were there and known by the authorities very early on, yet nothing was done. The court did determine that Beanish initially was not part of the abuse when she first joined the household, but then decided to go along with Urfan. I don't believe she was ever genuinely concerned for Sara. If she was, then she would have called the authorities or run away with her. Her messages to her sister were a way to cover her own back in case they were ever caught. As for Faisal, he might have not been directly responsible for the abuse, but he lived in a 3-bedroom house with them. It is not possible that he didn't know what was going on. As an adult, his job was to try to physically stop the abuse, take Sara to a safe place, or call the authorities who might have been able to help. He failed to do any of those things. If you watch my videos, then I invite you to please subscribe, leave a comment and like this video. It really helps a small channel like mine. Thank you for listening.